So one of the findings appears to be that solar systems of the type that we inhabit aren't particularly the solar system is not particularly emblematic of the typical solar system that has been discovered. So that's another bit of evidence for some kind of odd exceptionalism.
Yeah, we're not the template. I mean, even just the sun is not the template. Only 10% of stars look like the sun. And of those, very few are as quiet as our sun. Our sun's actually remarkably stable, doesn't flare too often, doesn't have many sunspots. Most other suns we look at are far more active than our sun, so that's interesting. As I said, we have a Jupiter. We have 2 Jupiters. That appears to be unusual. We have this rich dynamical system of 8 planets. As far as we can tell, I think the record holder is of 7 planets around one system that we've ever discovered. So there are many aspects about the solar system which could be quite special. But I wouldn't go as far as to say it's completely unique because, of course, our instrumentation is finite. We cannot detect exact clones of, say, Mars. Mars is just too small. It would be invisible to our current technologies. So as we're getting better and better, we are able to get more insight into the true uniqueness of the solar system. But it's certainly not a typical outcome. I think we could say that with some confidence at this point.
Okay. Now, you mentioned a couple of things I wanted to return to. The idea to begin with that there was something suspicious or even frivolous, let's say, about the search for life on exoplanets. And I was wondering what your opinion on this matter is. You talked about the projection that science fiction oriented people, let's say, might have of something approximating a religious belief in a sky alien who descends to the earth to save us. And that was an unbelievably common trope in the 1970s. I mean, I read a lot of science fiction in the 1970s, and that was extraordinarily. In fact, the Grok that Musk's AI is named after is a remnant of that kind of thinking, right? Because Grok was the mode of apprehension used by, I think, Valentine Smith in Stranger in a Strange Land, Robert Heinlein's book. And it was basically a sky savior who was humanoid that came from
I didn't know that.
Mars to, oh yes, that's very, well, that's why I wanted to bring this up, because there is a religious impulse that's lurking behind the technological enterprise that's associated, let's say, with the fantasizing about life in other planets. I mean, you see this pop up everywhere. So, for example, the Superman, the DC Comics character Superman is another good example of that. And right, because Superman has sky parents, and he's essentially a technological god who ends up on Earth. And you see the same thing replicated with, well, the Marvel universe in many ways with Thor and Loki. I know they're drawing from Norse mythology, obviously there, but the idea still lurks there. And I'm wondering if it's that subversion, like it's a juvenile subversion of the religious instinct that drives these fantasies of extraplanetary salvation at the hands of aliens, or perhaps destruction for that matter. So I'm wondering if you have any thoughts about whether that might be part of the reason why such concern was regarded for such a long time as less than serious or even frivolous.
Yeah, there's a rich history of theology intermixing with the search for alien life. If you even go back to the first speculations about alien life, this, I think you're talking about Cassini, he believed there was life on the moon. And so they were imagining kind of angels flying around, and there's these depictions of, with wings flying around in these caves. So they kind of imagine these angelic beings living on the moon. And that's why we should one day try and visit there. Similarly, when you look about speculations about life on Mars, Percival Lowell was an astronomer, kind of really an amateur astronomer. He kind of was an industrialist first in the 19th century, and then sort of committed to getting into astronomy and purchased the Lowell Observatory in Arizona as a huge donation from his wealth. But he was passionate about the idea of looking for life on Mars. And he really believed, as many did at the time, that they would be fairly human-like. And so many of the depictions were even not just human-like, but even expecting them to speak English and interact with radio technology and things like this.
Well, it would be English.
Yes, it's very much like that Star Trek trope of everyone just happens to look just like us. And there was really no almost imagination. It's kind of strange to get your head around. Why did they? It's puzzling to me. Why was there assumption that all these beings would look just like human beings?
I think it is an intermingling of the theological with the material, let's say. I mean, obviously there is an overlap between the idea of heaven and the idea of space. And heaven has been imagined as populated by beings forever. And that's a mystery. That's a very deep mystery in and of itself. It seems relatively obvious to me that the heaven of the mythological imagination is not the same heaven as the material heaven that's above us. And I suppose part of the evidence for that would be that the material heaven that's above us doesn't seem to be populated by devils, let's say, angels or gods. But there is that strange strain of human metaphysical speculation that does posit a parallel universe of a sort, or multiple parallel universes where alien beings exist. And, you know, there's some very strange things about that too. And one of the strangest things I know of is the fact that if you give human subjects DMT, which is the fundamental psychoactive chemical component of ayahuasca, people reliably report being shot out of their bodies and encountering alien beings. And that's so common that the main person who did this research, who was a very down-to-earth psychophysiologist, I think got so discombobulated by the consistency of these reports and the insistence by the people who had the experience that that was real, that he ceased investigating the DMT phenomena. So I don't know what to make of all that, obviously, and I don't think anyone else does too, but it is interesting to see the overlap between the imagination that projects deities into a mythological heaven and the actual domain of heaven above us.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah, I think there's a lot we can learn from theologians interacting with them. I've been to SETI conferences, and theologians are actually now starting to participate in those meetings. And there's a lot to learn about. It's almost like a search not only for life out there, but a search for who we are. What we look for says a lot about who we are, rather than, I mean, if we're looking for species which are engaging in nuclear war, because that produced such a loud signature that is almost more of a reflection of our own inner fears than it is of a serious discussion of what an advanced civilization would do. And so I think this connection's always been there.
well, you saw this in the latest mythological extravaganza, sort of planet-wide mythological extravaganza, which was the explosion of the Marvel universe. I mean, the Chitauri, who come from outer space, they're basically apocalyptic end-of-time demons, right? So, but it is conflated with actual space in a very interesting manner. And so, and it does say something very deep about our fears about, well, the end of the world and of salvation, and of the notion that both the end of the world and salvation will come from, what would you say, come from above, come from below, come from outside, something like that.
Yeah, I do. This doomist mentality certainly has been with us for a long time in SETI. And obviously, when SETI seriously got going in the 60s and 70s, the spectre of the Cold War was looming over, and it really baked into the origins of SETI, was thinking about the fear of destruction and annihilation. And I think there's a certain sense of that these days as well that has been re-raising its head for various reasons. And I've often said, even if you're a pessimist about intelligent life in the universe, now, right? There might be nobody out in the galaxy right now. You'd have to be a much more of a pessimist to believe that it never, ever happens in the billions, even trillions of years future that our galaxy still has ahead of it. And so if we are serious about making it our goal to have contact with another intelligent civilization, we should perhaps concede that it might not be a two-way conversation, but we can have a one-way conversation into the future, that we could leave a relic, we could leave a monument, as our ancestors did with the pyramids and many other monuments, Stonehenge. They left us messages from the past that transcend their own existence. And if we are feeling maybe pessimistic that we will never expand to this galactic empire, there is still hope of being remembered. If that's all maybe I think that's a fundamental component of our human desires is to not be forgotten, to have some thread of our strain of existence not be completely futile and gets remembered by the galaxy, then I think we should seriously commit to building a monument, maybe on the moon. The moon's an obvious place to do it because it's unaffected by weather or geological activity. It could last for billions and billions of years. We could build something, or a spacecraft that goes out with messages, that just has a tomb of information about who we are, what we believed in, our arts, our sciences. And I think that would be a really beautiful endeavor to try and unify people beyond what we believe in or maybe don't believe in, and also to have, honestly, some hope that the universe will not forget us. And maybe it's a small thread of a chance that anyone will ever discover it, but it's better than just giving up on the idea of detection altogether. I think that's probably our most likely window of getting detection.